Hi guys, Macho here. Today I'll be demonstrating how to prepare a summer-themed steak dinner. We're going to be making a pan-seared ribeye, a summer fruit and vegetable salad, and a selection of local market vegetables. First, let's take a look at our ingredients. Alright guys, so here we have our ingredients. We have some nice, beautiful grass-fed ribeyes. We're looking for a nice amount of fat throughout. All right, we got a nice piece of mozzarella cheese, a bit of fresh basil, and then we have some beautiful local vegetables and fruit. So we have some nice sun gold tomatoes. These have a really thin skin. We're gonna slice these up later for our salad. They're really juicy, really sweet. Some nice local nectarines. All this is grown in New Jersey. Some nice purple cauliflower, some broccoli, just a nice red onion. This is what they look like when they're young. We have an heirloom squash. This is called a gold bar variety. You can tell by the color. And then we have a nice Chinese eggplant that we're gonna cut up. We're also gonna be using today just some basic ingredients you probably have in your pantry. Olive oil, balsamic vinegar, a little bit of raspberry vinegar for our salad. Just gonna kind of help us pull out a bit more fruity notes. Salt, a bit of sugar, bit of black pepper, and that's all. Let's get started. So we'll start with our eggplant. So for today, I'm probably gonna use about half of this eggplant. So set that aside. Then I'm just gonna hold it in my hand from the peeler from the front to the back. I'm just gonna peel half of it off. I want a little bit of that skin flavor, but I don't wanna have all that texture in every bite. Then you wanna cut it in half so that it lays nice and flat. You make sure when you're holding your knife that you have the tip of one finger here and your thumb on the other side. That's called a pinch grip. That's what you want to use. That's kind of your money move with cutting. So these guys, we're gonna cut them first in half and then into quarters like this. And when I'm holding a vegetable that I'm cutting, it's really important that I do what's called the claw. So I'm gonna tuck my fingers in so my fingertips are behind. So my knife is only touching this outside knuckle. Now you don't want to pull it up so high that the blade will come down on your knuckle. You just want kind of the top of the knife brushing up against that every stroke. It's also really important that you have your thumb really tucked in nice and tight back here, not leading out in front like that. So you're gonna kind of hold your arm sideways and your hand is gonna go straight out. So you should have a nice straight wrist throughout. All right, and then we're gonna do just kind of bite-sized pieces. Again, we're gonna use about half of this guy. Kind of the same thing we did with the eggplant, but we're gonna leave all the skin on. What I like to do is take out a little bit of the seeds. So we're gonna go in. And now it's important, since we're gonna be cooking a lot of these things together, we wanna be cutting everything about the same size, and then we're gonna add them into the pan in the order that they're gonna cook. So for example, the squash is nice and tender. You could even eat it raw. So we're gonna add this towards the end. But something like the eggplant that's really kind of spongy and takes a while to cook down, we're gonna add that early on. Same thing kind of with the broccoli and the cauliflower. Okay, so the cauliflower, we're just gonna use a nice chunk like that. And we'll just cut away some of the stem. So then I'm just gonna take these pieces of cauliflower, just give them a rough chop. Again, just bite-sized pieces. You know, you're already gonna have your steak on a plate. You don't wanna be slicing your vegetables before you cook them and then also while you're trying to eat them. Again, just kind of cutting towards the tops. Next, we're gonna go ahead and prepare our red onion. So this guy, we're gonna split it in half. You always wanna cut these round guys in half so that you have a nice flat side that can sit on your cutting board. If something's round and you have it on your cutting board, it's gonna roll around and you run the risk of cutting yourself. So we'll just give these a slice, and we're gonna use the tops too. Again, not going for bite-sized pieces, but we're just doing some slices now. You can cut it about as big as you like. However large size a bite of onion you're okay with eating. We have our nectarine, we have some tomatoes, and a bit of mozzarella. So the mozzarella, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut this into some small cubes. You can leave it in rounds if it's a round log, or cut big strips, or even leave it in big chunks and kind of spoon the salad onto it when you put it on a platter. Whatever you'd like. All right, and then we have these tomatoes. We're just gonna cut these in halves. Fun fact about nectarines, they only actually have one gene that makes them different from peaches, and it is the gene that gives peach their fuzz. So actually, all a nectarine is a bald peach. So, we'll do some cubes on these guys. Kind of about the same size as the cheese or the tomatoes. And we'll grab our basil. Just gonna pull the leaves. And then the trick here is that as you're pulling them off, you're pulling all the big ones off. And you're gonna make a pile of all the big ones. And you're gonna make a pile of all the smaller ones. And once you have them all picked, you have all your big ones in a pile. And you'll kind of try and layer all the small ones into there. You'll turn on the side and you'll roll it up like a big cigar. Turn that sideways. See? Just kind of this rolled up basil tube. Take your knife and you're just gonna cut nice, really skinny strips here. It's a technique called chiffonade. All right, next we're gonna move along to start marinating our salad and then cooking our steak and our vegetables right after that. Now that we've got everything cut, we get all our tomatoes and nectarines in a bowl. We're gonna go ahead and start seasoning it. So we're gonna do just a little sprinkle of sugar, just a nice light layer on the top. This is gonna help bring out some of that natural sweetness from the fruit. Same thing with salt. You can use a little spoon like this, or you can just sprinkle with your fingers. Bit of olive oil. We're gonna add just a splash of our raspberry vinegar here, or balsamic, or any kind of vinegar you really want. I like this one because it's a little sweet. It's gonna play really well with that fruit. And take a spoon or spatula, whatever you prefer. Just give this a nice stir. And this is a good thing to do kind of as a first thing when you start preparing dinner. Let these fruits kind of really marinate in this mix. And that salt's gonna pull out some of the natural juices and everything's gonna really mix together. And that's kind of what's gonna form the dressing for our salad later on when we go to finish it. All right, it's time to start cooking our steak. Make sure any ventilation you have is on. That's really important when you're cooking in the house, especially if you have a small apartment. First we're gonna put our heat on low. And we're just gonna let our pan warm up for a second while we get our steak ready. So I've had these sitting out for about an hour. And now what we're gonna do is just hit both sides with salt. Now a lot of the salt you put on is gonna come off in the pan, so you wanna be pretty liberal with this. Another thing I like to do is try and find a nice gob of fat on the steak, like this right here. And we're gonna use this, we're gonna either pull it off or cut it off. We're gonna cut it into really small pieces, and then we're gonna use that as our fat to cook the steaks. So, we got the end of this guy cut off and diced up. I have that right here. And I'm gonna add it to this pan. The pan should be a little bit warm now, but it's still kind of heating up. And remember that we've started on low, it's dry, we haven't added anything to it. Should be able to hear a little bit of a sizzle, but it's not going to be too aggressive right now. What's going to happen now as that begins to cook, just place them around the pan like this, is that fat is going to melt down, and we're basically going to be able to cook our steaks in beef fat. So we can take our spoon or our tweezer tongs, whatever you feel most comfortable with. As you can see, there's a good film of fat forming in the bottom of the pan. And I can also tell by the color that these are getting that the pan's starting to get quite warm. When I have a nice layer of fat all across the bottom of the pan, I'm going to start cooking my steak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that fat down in the pan. And I'm going to either use my hand, a spoon, or these tongs work great for this too. And just hold the steak up so that the steak is basically standing up in the pan. And what we can do is kind of have them stand together at this point of cooking, and kind of lean on each other so they don't fall over. I'm going to go ahead and let them render like this for a minute or two on low. It's been a minute or two. We're ready to turn our steak on the side. We're going to go ahead and turn it up to high. We're just waiting for that sizzling sound to get more rapid and louder. Once that starts happening, we're going to flip our steak onto the side. Another important thing to remember as this steak is searing, that I have plenty of space in the pan that the steak's not touching. Those areas are getting much hotter than the areas where the steak is, because that steak is cooling them down as it's cooking. So it's important for me to rotate my steak into those spots. So if I start with my steaks at about 12 and 6 o'clock, I might move them to 3 and 9 o'clock now. So again, we'll keep everything rotating. We're watching our heat. We don't want anything too dark. We're watching how much smoke is coming out. I'm going to take them out. And a good investment for a situation like this is a nice rack that has some kind of wire on top. Or you can make something with aluminum foil and maybe a plate. And put a nice wire rack. And I'm going to try and keep it somewhere kind of warm. So today I'm not really using the oven, but if I had the oven on, I'd maybe leave the oven on low and pop it in there. But today I'm just going to put it kind of on the side of the stove. Got your pan ready, you got your beef bits out, but you left everything else in there. No need to worry about cleaning that up. Today, we're going to start with our eggplant. I like a nice soft eggplant. Once you're almost done cooking everything, you can give it a taste and see if it needs a little bit more salt. But generally, it's going to come out pretty nicely seasoned, just from what we started with here. All right, our eggplant's starting to get a nice char. And it's starting to look really translucent in some parts. We're going to go in with the cauliflower and our broccoli. I'm going to start with the cauliflower. I'm going to cook that for about 3 or 4 minutes. And then we'll go in with our broccoli. Add our broccoli. Everything's smelling really beefy, really nutty. Steak is going to tie everything in here great. At this point, just keep stirring everything around. You want to try and stay away from crowding your pan. And what that means is you want to have kind of one thin layer in your pan. So if you're making more food or you have a smaller pan, what you're going to want to do is cook it in batches, or maybe use 2 pans on 2 separate burners and then mix it all together towards the end. Otherwise, you're going to get some bits that are undercooked, some bits that are stuck to the bottom that might be burnt or overcooked. This way you ensure that everything kind of cooks evenly. We can keep stirring everything. Use my spoon or my spatula at this point. Just give everything a stir every couple minutes. We'll let that cook for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to go ahead and add the rest of our vegetables, give it a taste for seasoning, and finish up this part of the meal. So now we have this beautiful sauteed vegetable medley. Now I'm going to give it just the tiniest squirt, a little bit of balsamic vinegar. It's going to give some acidity to balance our nice summer dish, keep everything from feeling heavy with that fatty steak. All right, guys. So our steaks, they've been resting while we've been mixing the salad and we cook the vegetables. And that helps the juices inside redistribute, and all that heat that's on the outside of the steak where it's being seared can finish penetrating inside. And we can have one nice temperature throughout the steak so that when you cut it, the blood doesn't go everywhere. It's not hot on the outside and cold in the middle or anything like that. And I'm just gonna cut it in slices about as wide as a Sharpie marker. All right, guys, and there we have our steak plated. Now, really important, really crucial step at this point, that for everything to taste good in the middle, the same way it does on the outside, that we go ahead and season this guy now. So just a little bit of salt, and this is where you bust out all your fancy salts, your fleur de sel, your coarse sea salt, whatever fancy stuff you got, sprinkle it right on. Just a little touch will do, but you want to make sure that the steak's seasoned evenly the same way all the way through. I also like to do a little bit of fresh cracked pepper right on top. All right, so we got our entree plate here, the steak already on it. We got our roasted vegetables. We'll go ahead and put some veggies on our plate here. All right, next we have our salad. Make sure and give our salad a nice toss before. So all that sauce that's settled in the bottom can make its way onto the salad. And here we have it, guys. A beautiful pan-seared ribeye, roasted farmer's market summer vegetables, and a nice tomato nectarine and mozzarella salad with arugula. Enjoy.